Hey, it's Michelle, and today I would like to talk about underhyped books. Now, there is a readathon coming from July 21st through July 27th, and it is the underhyped readathon. I think this is a terrific idea. It is the brainchild of Charlotte Jones, and she has a YouTube channel called Ramblings of an Elf Pyre. I will put a link to that below. She has created a GoodReads group for the readathon, and I will put a link to that below. There are going to be Twitter sprints and giveaways and all kinds of good things. But the whole point of the readathon is to read and share books that we think are underhyped. Well, the first thing she addressed was, what is an underhyped book? And so she was looking for books that had 5,000 or fewer ratings on GoodReads. So I use that criteria also to choose the books that I put in this video, but I realize I have read a ton of books that are 5,000 ratings or less, so I'm limiting this video to books that had 5,000 ratings or less, and I gave a 5-star rating on GoodReads, so that'll help limit how long this video is. So let's get started with my list, shall we? The first book on my list is Evidence of Things Not Seen. I got a free digital copy of this book in advance of it coming out. It is by Lindsay Lane, and it follows Tommy, sort of. He is missing. He is an autistic young man in high school, and he goes missing, and the book alternates between people being interviewed about his disappearance and people finding items that belong to him that might be evidence. It was just a really unique book. I got so invested in characters that only showed up in one chapter. The writing was just that good. I haven't heard anybody review this book. I haven't really heard any buzz about it, but I think it deserves it. I do want to say that a lot of the topics in the book are not for children, so you do need parent permission, or you might want to take that into account before you start reading. Secondly on my list is Searching for Sky. This was another book that I got a digital copy of before it was released to review. And this is by Jillian Cantor, and it was billed as a reverse dystopian. And I was like, I don't know what that would mean, but that's interesting enough for me to request the book. And I requested it and was actually approved. So I read it and I absolutely adored it. It was not perfect, but it was so... the relationship in the story was just so beautiful, and I just thought it was really well done. Like I said, there were a couple of things that I didn't really care for, but they were very minor, and I really thought it was a great book and think more people should check into it. Next up is The Night Following by Morag Joss, and I read this several years ago. I had no idea what the book was about. I think I picked it up at a Target one time. Really, no one recommended it to me or anything. It was just haunting. It's about a lady who, I believe she hits somebody with her car and kills her. But she doesn't admit it. She does like a hit and run. And then she starts like spying on the lady's widower. And just kind of creepy stuff happens and kind of surprising stuff, but just the human aspects of it and her dealing with guilt and the way the plot unfolds. That book has just really stuck with me to this day, so I gave it 5 stars, obviously. Next up is a book I actually have a physical copy of. That's very rare for me, but this is Boys Like You. This was a cover buy for me, an extreme rarity, and I picked this up at a Barnes & Noble when I was out of town a couple of months ago, and it is a teenage romance, which I'm not normally too into. I'm 41 now, so I'm not too into that, but this had so much more to it. The characters that end up falling in love are very complex and dealing with very difficult things in their life. What made me pick the book up was 2 broken souls, 1 hot summer, and then on the front is a quote that says, "A story of family, first love, and forgiveness," and I loved it. It's excellent. I don't know why people aren't reading it. Pick it up, please. You'll love it. Next, I want to talk about We Are the Goldens by Dana Reinhardt, and this was another book that I got from NetGalley as a digital advanced copy, and I loved this story. It follows two sisters. They are very close in age. Their parents were already in their late 30s, early 40s when they had the two girls. And then they split up about 5 years later. So the girls have really had each other to rely on. They're very close. The youngest one has just gotten to high school, so she's in the same building as her sister, and she's thrilled. And then she uncovers the secret that her sister is having an affair with a teacher. And so the whole story talks about how that affects their relationship and their lives, and I thought it was beautiful. Next, I'd like to talk about Sinned by Patty Blunt, and this is about a young man who commits a cybercrime, and it's early on in cyberbullying, cybercrime, and so he is made an example of, and he actually goes to juvie. And when he gets out, he changes schools a lot because the problem seems to follow him, and eventually he changes his name and then changes schools. And the story follows him after that, and someone figures out his secret, and it was very thought-provoking, and it was very well written, and the characters are wonderful, and it just seems so pertinent to today's situation with social media being as rampant as it is, and how easy it would be for a young person to make a mistake that would really impact their lives. So I recommend Sinned by Patty Blunt. Next is a series that I read thanks to a coworker at school. She's a teacher, and she and I think a lot alike a lot of times. And she had read this series and was just so excited about it, talked her mom into reading it, and her mom's not very into fantasy. It is a fantasy series. It is a trilogy. It is by David Anthony Durham. And this story is just, it is engaging. It follows three siblings of he's some kind of ruler. I can't remember if they call him a king or whatnot. But all three siblings have very different story arcs that develop. And the way they drift apart and come back together and all the things that happen, it was just totally engrossing. And I remember some days coming into school and just being like, Molly, I can't believe this happened. She's like, I know. So it was really shocking. It was really touching. It had everything. It's a wonderful series. Acacia, again, by David Anthony Durham. The next series I would like to talk about, it is not complete. The last books have not been written. 2 books have been published so far and a novella, and that is the Insignia series by S.J. Kincaid. I'm not sure how many books will end up being in this series, or I'd tell you. I love this series. It follows some teenagers in a dystopian setting that is very much like the modern day, but World War III is happening. But World War III is not taking place on Earth. It's a very strange setup where the fighting actually happens off-planet and is kind of remote controlled. And so, yes, assets are getting hurt, but not actual physical people. But it's still, there's still this technology and race going on to see who has the better technology, but also because things are controlled by humans, there's a human aspect of it as well. So there's a young man, Tom, and he is sucked into this world where he is trained to control ships in the war and that kind of thing. But there are whole other stories with it. There are relationships between Tom and the folks there at his training school, as well as some interactions with the enemy that make it completely engrossing. It's well written. The world unfolds nicely. It has great pacing. And I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. The only reason I know about it is because Bridget from Bree Book Reviews showed it in a haul one time. And I don't even know if she actually ever read the series, but I enjoy it thoroughly and look forward to continuing on with that series in the future. The next 2 books are by the same author, and I love these books. They are middle grade, and so they won't be everyone's cup of tea. But in my opinion, for middle grade books, these are amazing. Peg Carrot has written Stolen Children, and Runaway Twin. She's written other books, but those two are absolutely fabulous. And when I want a book to read out loud to the students, those two are just amazing. The pacing is awesome between funny scenes and intense scenes and suspense. And you can do voices along, especially with Stolen Children. The kids just love it. Our library has to keep lots of copies of Stolen Children. I usually read that one to them first in the year. And so the library has 5 or 6 copies, and they don't usually have more than 2 copies of any other book. So anyway, I really enjoy Peg Carrot's writing for middle grade and gave both of those books 5 stars. And lastly is one for the Murphys. This is also I'm not sure if it'd be considered middle grade or young adult, probably middle grade. There's nothing inappropriate in it at all. And this follows a young lady whose mother is having some difficulties, and so she is taken into the foster system, and she lives with this family, and the family is amazing, and you would think the girl would be so happy to be a part of them, but really it kind of has a little bit of an opposite effect on her, and she starts thinking about things like, well, why isn't my birth family this awesome, and starts to feel down, and just the struggles between that, and there's a kind of a shocking revelation at the end, and it does have a sort of happy ending, but at the same time you're kind of like, ooh, that may not be what I think is best, or may not be what I wanted to happen. So anyway, one for the Murphys, and that is by Linda Mullally Hunt. So there are my 5-star underrated books that I would recommend to you if you have not already made your TBR for the Underhyped Readathon coming up. And 3 books you see behind me are possibilities for me to read during the Underhyped Readathon, although the list has about 16 other books on there as well, so it may not be these that I end up reading. We'll see. Thanks for watching.